crucify him. Mark got on the microphone backstage and went, totally boring, totally boring. I was 15. I got no leeway for that at all. His first time on stage was so traumatic, it's surprising Carrey didn't quit comedy altogether. The only reason he took a 2-year break was because his family was so poor they could not afford to invest in his dream. The family of 4 lived in a Volkswagen van near Burlington, Canada. Jim and his brother John also spent months living in a tent in the Charles Daly Park on Lake Ontario. But Jim soon overcame his fears and returned back to the stage in 1979. The 17-year-old quickly transitioned from open mics to regular paid shows. In addition to growing in popularity, Carrey attempted to break into the industry by auditioning to be a cast member for the 1980-1981 season of NBC's Saturday Night Live. Unfortunately, SNL's executive producer selected Charles Rocket over Carrey. Facing failure once again, Carrey continued performing stand-up across Toronto and the surrounding.
I think I mentioned, but I read your book because my dear friend Nooper told me that I should, and every now and again I would see you come up on my feed. I don't spend much time on Instagram anymore, but when I did, I just felt like you were having a different conversation. And it's not that I have stopped doing interviews because I want to hide myself away. I think it's because I wanted to be able to have a certain type of conversation that I didn't seem able to find a space for. And so I called Nooper and said, I think I just reached out to Jay to see if he would let me come and do his podcast.
This has always blown my mind a little bit. 53% of you that listen to the show regularly haven't yet subscribed to the show. So could I ask you for a favor before we start? If you like the show and you like what we do here and you want to support us, the free, simple way that you can do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. And my commitment to you is if you do that, then I'll do everything in my power, me and my team, to make sure that this show is better for you every single week. We'll listen to your feedback, we'll find the guests that you want me to speak to, and we'll continue to do what we do. Thank you so much. Jimmy, we've really just only met, and you are already, to me, a bit of a Rubik's Cube.
Okay.
In so many ways. And I've been trying to piece the pieces together to understand the uniqueness of you, because you're so unbelievably unique. We just drove over here in the car, and hearing you speak about the way that you view life, and speaking to you yesterday on the phone, I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, and I've never, ever met someone who has the perspective on
that when I heard it, I knew I wanted to cover it. So every single one of you out there, I'm sure, at one point in your life, you have told a lie. And most of us grow out of the lying as we get older. When I was a kid, I told several big lies. I was quite the storyteller. In first grade, I was being diagnosed with ADHD, and I had to see the school counselor and talk to her during that process. And I came up with a completely different life story because I thought my life was pretty boring. Another friend of mine had a much more interesting life. So I kind of took her life story, and I told the counselor that my parents were getting divorced, that my mom picked me up from school with her boyfriend on a motorcycle, that my mom was pregnant. It was all lies. It was so embarrassing. My parents had to come in and explain that it was all made up. And then in third grade, I tried to convince my entire class that I needed glasses, and I started wearing fake Build-A-Bear glasses, which were way too small for my face. And in fifth grade, I tried to tell everyone.
Would you put your 2 Monaco wins as the top of the top for you in your career?
The second one I would, because I feel that was more of a earning the victory. The first one, Michael was leading. I think he had a suspension failure, something to do with maybe the gearbox overheating part of the suspension. So that's inherited. Now, I know a win's a win, but I, from a very young age in karting, used to give myself marks out of 10 in my performance. And sometimes I'd win a race and I would give myself 5 because I didn't feel that I'd performed in every area as best I could. And therefore, applying that little notebook technique I had when I was a kid, the first victory here would be a 5. Now you get 25 points, you get the champagne, you get all the adulation. But in terms of inner peace, inner feeling of I did something that was at the top of my game against other high performing sports people, then the second one, I think, I give myself 9 out of 10 for that.
Getting to learn about them behind the scenes. And today's guest is someone who I met just a few moments ago. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long, long time. I'm so glad to finally have him in the studio. And in the few moments I've spent with him, I can already tell that we're going to have a great conversation. Please welcome to On Purpose, Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc is one of the biggest names in global sport. Charles currently races in Formula One driving for the legendary Ferrari since 2019, the youngest driver in history to be signed up by the team. Charles features in the hit Netflix series Drive to Survive and is loved by fans and sports community alike for his positive mindset and determined, straightforward approach. Charles, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person and to be here.
When I was researching, as I do for all my guests, I can listen to interviews, I'll read articles. You haven't done a lot of interviews. You don't talk so much about things publicly.
In Japan, China, South Korea, the United States, some behavioral scientists have credited this retreat from society to the overwhelming pressure of succeeding in Asia's work culture after high school. So in China, some people actually attribute it also to the fact that the population has profoundly more men than women, saying that this puts so much pressure on men looking for partners, whereas women can be a lot more selective. So these men decide, I don't even want to partake in this game that society plays. I want to completely withdraw. So why is this happening all of a sudden in this day and age? Because of technology. So back then, there were hikikomori in Japan, and most of them would read manga, they would watch like DVDs and stuff. But now with the internet, people feel like they really don't have to go outside. Everything can be done online. They can watch shows, they can watch YouTube videos, they can talk to people anonymously without the threat of feeling exposed or vulnerable. They can go to safe forums that
Still, from what we know, his grandfather made shoes for high-profile dignitaries in Mexico, while his father was one of the owners of Total Gas Station before he passed away. Now, it's obvious Fofo comes from a wealthy background, and his social media personality basically revolves around him posing in the most luxurious cars, going to clubs with his friends, and living that Mexican dream. It was also through sharing his luxurious lifestyle on social media that he garnered more than 3 million gram followers, making him what Gen Zs call an influencer. However, Fofo's fame on IG wasn't enough. He decided to navigate his way to TikTok, where he established a fan base, but also began getting himself in trouble. A lot of people had eyes on him, and of course wanted to bring him down. But Fofo didn't care. He had a huge ego. It felt like he was unstoppable. But all that ego was crushed down to the ground the moment he messed with one of Mexico's deadliest cartels, the new Jalisco Generation Cartel, aka CJNG.
I think you're in a very bad place spiritually, in your life if you're celebrating the murder of a person like that. I mean, again, this wasn't, a lot of what I do on the program, we make fun of the news, we make fun of what's happening. A lot of it's dark comedy. So I don't go out there and police people's reactions or tell them what to say. But if that's the first reaction you have to that video is to celebrate this, or you can't be doing great. You can't be doing great if if you're celebrating the murder of this man. I don't think you're at a good place in your life. And like I said, I saw the video. I watched it one.
But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of black people and be more secretive and more, we want to help you by doing these things and seeing them as inferior.
Doing what things?
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that eventually ruin our culture and place us where we are now.
So
but I want to get back to the history of it, because we're talking about...
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's
rent-free.
Well, then give them the money while the dad's in the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting less than this amount of dollars, you're getting money from the government. Yes, it is incentivizing.
You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't even know what that means in this scenario, because yes,
you want
to talk about throwing babies out with the bathwater? Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race because she thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built